magical steampunk economy-driven world of board game Brawl. Well, at least 33% of that statement is true. What also is true is that I am Nick, and today we're taking a look at City of Iron by Ryan Lockhat, and published by his company, he really is the company, Red Raven Games. This was originally on Kickstarter, but this is the retail edition. There's actually not too much difference between the two of them. So, I get bashed a lot in my gaming group for not liking Euro games. And if you look at my shelf behind me, there's not a lot of evidence to say otherwise, because I only keep games that I like, and I don't have a lot of Euro games. So, yeah, that's absolutely true. I will gladly wear the badge of being an Ameritrash lover. Although there is an Ameritrash badge on Board Game Geek, I don't have it yet, but one day. And I just love theme in games, and most Euro games do not have a strong theme. I play games, whether it's tabletop board games, tabletop role-playing games, video games, whatever, because I want to be taken away into an imaginary, faraway land that's not real life, without having to imbibe a narcotic to do so. Both at the same time can be kind of interesting, though. But anyways, I didn't say that. So, Euro games are usually not up my alley. And, you know, if you take a look at the box of City of Iron, if you look at the cards and all the different artwork, you would actually, your first inclination would be to say, oh, look, another steampunky Ameritrash game. No, this game is a Euro game. It just is. It may not have come from Germany, but it is an economy engine, resource management, area control. Well, not area control in the traditional sense, but you can try to conquer other people's areas and take control of them. But a lot of Euro-y elements to it. So it's absolutely a Euro game in sheep's clothing. So it shouldn't be a game that I like. But I heard a lot of good things about it. I did like the design, artwork, and components of it. And I decided to take a chance on it. So, was I right? Is this the Euro game that's going to change my mind? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at it, and then we'll come back, and I'll tell you what I think, because my opinion is kind of the only one that matters on this video. Now, City of Iron is a pretty complicated game, and there's no way I can give you every single detail about it, but I'm just going to try to give you an overview of what to expect and whether it might interest you or not. So, at the start, everyone's going to choose a color, and you'll take that assortment of cubes, and you're going to have your own little personal storage over here. There's going to be cubes that you have for the victory point track at the top of the board, and then you have cubes of each color for the bidding track. Now, the bidding track is pretty interesting because how that's going to work is the bottom part is actually the order from left to right of how people are going to bid, and you're just going to assign that randomly at the very start of the game. And the top numbers right above between that and the victory point track is going to be where you're going to do the actual bidding for turn order. So from at the beginning of every round, from left to right, people decide how they want to bid. Now, they can go on any of the 0 spaces if they want. If they want to go to the number spaces, they're going to have to pay that amount of coins right then and there. And the thing is, the turn order is actually going to be determined from right to left. So the higher up you're willing to go and spend, that's what the turn order is going to be. But whoever went last the last time gets to go first in the new bidding order for the next round, and so on. So that can be an interesting little back and forth. Now, everyone's going to have a different race, a different empire that they control for the game. And while the game functions the same for everyone's going to have some little powers that make them different. So you have the Hogman Republic, and they start off with a strategist citizen, and they can replace the captain in their deck with the gunslinger. And the city-state of Ark, they are allowed to have a free action to pay a coin to move a building. That can be handy, and so on and so forth. Everyone's got some different little abilities. But when I say they're the citizens and the military deck and all things like that, what do I mean? Well, everyone starts with a certain deck of cards, and you're only going to have 2 military cards, and these are the cards that have the guns on the back, and 2 citizen cards. And you have... There will be different artwork for the different races. This is for the Crusarians, but you have, for the military deck, everyone starts with a soldier and a captain. And like I said, certain empires are going to let you change out what those are to start off with. And then for the citizen deck, you have a cartographer and you have a scholar. Now, there's a lot of different symbols on these cards. First off, if you want to play a card for its action, you can do so. But in order to play a card for its action, you have to play other cards to fuel them. It's one action to actually play a card, but to use the fuel, it's free. So the captain requires that you have this little hammer symbol up here at the top. So you have to play another card that has that hammer symbol. And we see that both of these citizens do. So if you have the captain and one of these other citizens in your hand, you can use one of them to fuel the captain's ability. Now, in reverse, if you wanted to use the cartographer, you would need a hammer and this little distance symbol from other cards. So you'd have to play the scholar and the soldier in order, or I'm sorry, the scholar and the captain in order to make that happen. And you're not always going to have every card available to you. You'll start off with a card from one deck, and then you're not going to be able to redraw until the end of your turn. And that's going to be determined by the type of cities and towns and buildings that you have, how many cards you're actually going to be able to draw. And the interesting little thing about that is that when you actually discard, the order that you discard is the order that they're put back when you have to redraw from the deck. You never shuffle, you just flip the deck over and draw from the top. Whatever the first card was in your discard pile is the first one that you're going to draw. And at the end of every round, after the scoring, you're going to have the ability to buy more and better cards to put into your deck. So you have better military cards like the Iron Dragon that gets an attack of 5 and so on, and they all have different symbols, and there's new citizen cards and they all have different abilities. But we'll get back to those in a moment. Everyone starts off with a land board that is a cost of 0 and have the same 4 symbols. And they all have different art, but that doesn't really matter. The 4 symbols are prerequisites that you're going to need for certain buildings. If a building has one of these symbols, and only that symbol, then, or any of these symbols, you're allowed to have it in one of your cities underneath your land board. But if you try to buy a building and you don't have a land with one of these symbols, then you're out of luck. Now later in the game, you will be able to use distance to buy more land boards, and this is the required distance that you have to accumulate in order to get these land boards, and they all have different symbols. So you see this has the desert and palm tree symbol, which the starting land board didn't have, and a couple more have these floating island symbols that some of the other boards don't have. So if you want to get certain buildings, that's the only way you're going to be able to build them. And every player has and starts off with these little city tokens. And everyone starts off with a 5, which is up here, might be hard to see, and this little citizen icon. So the citizen icon means that for every one of these symbols that you have on underneath your land board in your cities or among your buildings, that's how many of those citizen cards you're going to be able to draw at the end of the round. But the number is the maximum amount of buildings you can have in play underneath your land board. And you're going to have opportunities to make more and more of these tokens. So for instance, everyone's got the capability to build a 3, so you can have 3 more buildings and so on. So that's very vital to the survival. And there's also some of the buildings will have the military icon instead, which will let you draw more military cards. So once you've got your player empire decided and you've got your starting deck, and you bid for the turn order, and then play will begin. So everyone starts off with some extra money, and 5, I believe, and everyone has some action chips. Now this is just a helpful reminder to determine how many actions you have in a round. And you have 3, so every time you use one of them, you're going to flip this over and it goes to the next person in line until everyone's used all 3 of their actions. And you have a few different things you can do in your turn. So one of them is to build something. So what do you build? Well, there's this deck of building cards, and you have A cards, B cards, and C cards. And they're all sorted together and put in the same stack and separated by these scoring cards. You're going to lay out that many cards at the beginning of the game. And you're going to replenish these cards and discard some of the bottom ones once you are at the end of the round and when you're setting up for the next round. These are the buildings that you can actually build with one of your actions. Now you always have to meet the prerequisites to actually build something. The first and obvious one is the cost. So for instance, the barracks cost 2 gold. You have to actually have 2 gold to pay, and you pay it immediately, and you're going to build it. And you'll put your building cards that you purchase directly underneath your cities. So you see I don't have a lot of room here, but that's basically how that works. And again, at the beginning of the game, you can only build up to 5 until you make more city tokens. But there are other prerequisites. I mentioned that the land boards have symbols. So for instance, in order to build this Shrika pasture, which looks like those fuzzy things from Star Wars, you have to not only pay 2 gold, but you have to make sure that your land board has that like grassland symbol. And if my camera could focus on that, that would be great. But okay, you get the idea. So everyone starts off with a land board that has the grasslands, and that's not a problem. But there are other cards like the salt fields, and no one starts off with salt fields, with the desert symbol, so that you're not going to be able to make. And there's also this other little symbol over here that looks like a book. Well, books represent science, and there are actually tokens for that. These are science tokens, and this is another type of currency that you're going to have to discard when you pay for certain buildings. And it just represents the knowledge that you have that is going to help you build stuff. And one of your actions on the turn can actually be to spend 5 gold to have a science token. And once you make a particular type of building that requires a science token, you never have to spend a science token for that particular type of building again, because it's knowledge. Your empire now has the knowledge to make a mine or a salt field or a docks. And once you have that knowledge, you don't have to worry about it. But you still have to pay the other costs and follow the symbols. And what happens, what benefit is there to actually having a building? Well, it's all about, in most cases, resources. So let's go back to the Shrika pasture. You see it has 2 little symbols of the Shrika, those like oxen type creatures. If you have that building and you put it in your town, you're going to immediately take a cube of your color. Let's say that the Hogmen bought it in their color yellow. And you're going to put that on the resource track for the Shrika. And because there were 2 images of Shrika, you put it on the 2. That represents how many you have. If you buy more and more cards, like let's say it's still there and the Hogmen go ahead and buy this Shrika pasture that actually has 3 Shrika on it, although it costs 1 more gold, they would then move up to 5 on the track. Now, why is this relevant? That's because at the end of every round, there's going to be a scoring round. And whoever has the most, has a cube on this track and is the highest is going to score bonus points. And that's the first number that's at the top of each board. For most of these lower resources, it's only 2. But the better resources you have, for instance, the tentacles, of course, the naughty tentacles go up to 3, all the way up to these crystal diamonds that go up to 6 points. And there's also something for the second place person. For the lower resources, it's 1, all the way up to 4. So if you're also on the track, but you're not quite as high, you'll at least get that bonus prize. If there's ever a tie, then you both get those points. Now, you also, whoever reaches, there's certain resources that have these little shields. If you're ever to meet or surpass that shield, you'll get an additional bonus point when scoring. There's also gold that you're going to get for being the top player during the scoring round. And that's basically how the towns are going to work. Now, there are other things that you can get from, the buildings work. There's other things you can get from buildings. For example, just having a clock tower in your town is going to give you an extra citizen icon. And that citizen icon is going to help you draw more citizen cards at the end of the round. And there's one here for military, which is the barracks. The distillery is going to give you an extra coin when you build it for every one of those radishes or beets that you have. I'm sorry that my camera's not focusing very well. And an academy is great because every round it's just going to give you a science. So that's a good thing to get early because science can be hard to get and you need it to build more and more things. So that's one thing you can do with your turns. I mean, I've actually described 2 actions. You can make science, you can make buildings, and you could also just draw from your deck. Now, sometimes you just really want to use, one type of action you can do is to play an action card. But if you don't have the right action card, you can choose to draw from your deck and hope that you either draw the card that you need or that you draw the fuel that you need to use the action that you want to use. You can also choose to store a building. When you store a building, you're actually just going to take it and you're going to put it underneath your player card or somewhere where it's out of the way. And that represents a building that you haven't actually built. You cannot use the abilities of it. You do not move the resource track up if applicable. But no one else can buy it. And whenever you want to buy it, you'll just pay the money with one of your actions on your turn, and then you'll put it out. So if it's just a building you know that you want, but you can't afford it right now, it might be better just to store it so that it doesn't either get bought by another player or get wiped away. Because at the end of every round, the bottom 4 cards are going to get discarded and removed from the game, and there's only a couple of cards that will let you dig cards out of the discard pile. So you may not see that card again, or it may be very rare. So that's another action that you can take. Once everyone's taken, the last type of action you can take is actually to attack towns. So some of the military cards that you have are actually going to give you attack, like attack of 1. Now, if you want to, you can actually use these cards or combination of cards to make attacks on town cards. So these are the towns over here, and they come in varying varieties, 1-star, 2-star, and 3-star. And there's also some that don't have the stars, which is just like sort of a special variant. But basically, in order to attack one of these, you're going to make sure the cards are flipped over to the side that say unconquered. And there's going to be these numbers down here, defense number and a distance number. This is how much distance you must have to get to this town. Basically, you're sending these fleets of airships, and if you can't get enough distance with your airships, you're not going to be able to make it to the town. The top is basically that town's defense, so this one's very simple. You need to accrue 2 attack in order to take it out. If you manage to do that, you're going to take this just like you would a building and put it next to your board somewhere. Except that this doesn't count as a building in your town. In fact, you can have, in your city. In fact, you can have as many town cards as you want lined up next to your board. And they're going to give you resources. So this one's going to give you 2 of those Shrika that I mentioned. So as soon as you do that, you're going to move your cube up the board to the appropriate spot. Now, when you do conquer one, you're going to flip it over to the other side, which is the conquered side. And you'll notice that the defense value changed. Now it's 4. That's because once you've conquered something, you've put your troops there, and so it makes it harder to be conquered. And why does that matter? Because the other players can make an attempt with an attack action to attack your towns, and you can attack other people's towns. And it's the same process. You'll take them into your city as an extra card that doesn't count as a building and gain the resources for it. So you have to make that decision if you have enough attack and distance. And once everyone's taken their 3 actions, then there's going to be the basic end of round cleanup. Now, most of the time it's just going to go like this. You'll collect income, and you gain income everyone gains a base income of 2. But every time that you have a town or a building that gives you goods, you're actually going to move one of your colored cubes up your income track on your player card. You do not gain income if towns and buildings give you stuff like military icons or just bonuses for coins. It has to actually produce goods. You also get the bonus coin, like I mentioned, if you are the highest person on one of the tracks and you're actually on the track, you're going to gain the amount of coins it shows there. If there's a tie, both players collect the same amount of coins. So it could be 1, 2, and that's as high as it gets. So you'll collect your income, and then you're actually going to collect any science you have from academies, and you're going to draw your military and citizen cards. And remember that you draw a number of military and citizen cards from your deck. I should actually have these over here. Equal to however many, basically the guns and the watches you have in your city, and from cards. It represents citizens and military. And you'll draw that many cards, and then you'll have them in hand to use, so that could be useful. And the last thing you can do is that you can look through all the other stack of cards that your race came with and purchase as many of them as you can if you have the resources available. So the Iron Dragon is a lot. He takes 10 coins and 2 science. You have to discard immediately. But some are pretty cheap. He's 3 and 1. The Engineer's only 3. And they all have special abilities. Like the Scientist lets you collect up to 2 science, but you have to pay 2 for each, which is still better than paying 5 for 1 with one of your normal actions. The Tax Collector was very handy in the games we played. You just play him and you immediately take 3 coins from the supply. And some of the military ones, the Machinist gives you attack of 2, and if you use this card for attack, you actually get to draw another military card, which can be very handy. And the Spy, who looks like the brother of the Tax Collector, gives you attack of 1, and you draw a citizen card if you use this card for distance or for attack. Remember, if you use it for distance, you're just following the symbols up here, and you ignore the ability, except in this particular case. and E costs 3. So that's the last thing you can do. Now, there is something that you do at the end of round cleanup that only happens once in a while, and actually only 3 times during the game, and that's actual scoring. The reason that doesn't happen but so often is because in the building deck, like I said, it's divided into A, B, and C. At the end of every stack of a letter, there is a scoring card. When you actually draw the scoring card from the deck, you're going to stop and you're going to finish that round that you're in. At the end of that round, then you're going to do the scoring for that round. And everyone gains a book just as part of the process, but then you're going to go and you're going to look at the board. And that's when you're actually going to accrue the points that you have for each of the different resources. So if you are all the way up on the Shrika track and you're up to, let's say that blue is up to 4, then they are going to gain 2 points and they're going to move themselves up on the track with using different cubes. And it's just going to go up and down the line. You get bonus points for the shield, like I already mentioned. The second place is also going to get points as well. But that's only going to happen every time you draw one of these cards, and it goes all the way down to the C card, which is the last card in the deck. And the game continues in the same kind of fashion, except that some of the buildings are different. So, especially in the last game, there's going to be new types of resources, like the gears, the stuff that's higher up on the track. And there's going to be all kinds of cards that don't give you any resources, but they give you bonus points at the end of the game just for having the most of any kind of particular resource. And the final scoring card, since science doesn't matter, then you're actually going to have other stuff that you're basically like achievements that you're working towards. So whoever has the most coins, whoever has the most distance, whoever has the most of one good, whoever has the most citizen and military cards, and so on, you're going to get bonus points for that. And you're going to move yourselves up appropriately, and whoever has the most points is the winner. It's usually blue because blue is awesome. I always choose blue. And that's basically City of Iron. There's a lot of other details I didn't put in, but that's basically what you're looking at when you play the game. So that's City of Iron, and was this game enough to bring me around to Euro games more? Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that I like this game. This is a good and solid game. The theme is like I said, it's actually not very strong in this. Yes, it looks great, and you do have a sense that you're this empire trying to build yourself out. But still, once you get over that little bit, there's really nothing that dramatically different about it. Nothing that dramatically thematic about it. But it doesn't really matter because the game plays so well and so tight and just very smoothly over the course of it that the theme does actually take second place for me in this case. And what I love most about the game is that there are different ways to win. So you can go the all-war route. And if you go the all-war route, you're going to get some really great benefits from conquering those towns and getting a lot of resources that way. But you're not going to get as many resources as people that go more the economic route. But also the economic people are not going to gain as many benefits and as quickly as the other players who are going the war route. And if you are going to be more warlike, you can actually attack the other players' towns, which can be very nice if you know that someone is in close competition with you. You want more of a resource, they have it, boom, you're there, go for it. So that's really interesting. And the roles, the races that each player has control of, or the empires, republics that they all control, can really benefit whatever type of methods you're going for. So if you are trying to be more of a building type person, there's the white-haired elven-like people who the Cresarians, I think, have benefits with science, which can be really great. Whereas the Hogmen are really warlike and encourage that. So that's going to sort of give you that guidance of where you need to go. And I like that. I prefer games where you've got a little bit of structure at the beginning to point you in the right direction of where you should go. But even if you know that, hey, I should be building a lot of stuff, you still can branch out and have a variety. And you should. This game really rewards people who are more balanced between going for building and conquering stuff. I like the deck building aspect. Now, it's really not that prevalent. I would never say that this is a deck building game, ever. But I like that it can also guide your turns as well, and what the 3 actions you take are in a round. But also, it has that really unique, maybe this is just a minor thing, but I've actually never seen, or I've never actually played a deck builder where you can, instead of shuffling the deck, you're never shuffling the deck, you're just flipping the deck over when you need to. And whatever order those cards were in, that's the order they're going to be in. You're going to draw whatever's on the bottom of the pile first. I like that. Maybe that's a minor thing, but the fact that it has a little bit of strategy, like, boy, I could hold off on playing this card, but then I will need it next round. I'm going to try to build something, so maybe I should just dump this now as a currency to use another card so that it's on the bottom, and that's what I like too. You can play having the ability to play cards for different things is always a neat thing in a game. In this case, you can use a card for its ability, but then you need fuel from other cards to do it. So a card can either be as fuel for something else or used for its ability, and I really like that. I really like the free action aspects going for those cards. We actually messed that up the first time that we played and didn't realize how useful that is. And the second time I played, it was huge. It was awesome. I mean, really changed things. I didn't win, but there you go. So that's all very neat. I like the different resources out. There is that little bit of theme in that there's different types of resources. The ones that look like the I don't know, even know the Wampas or the things from Star Wars, the little animals, and then the demon souls in a jar kind of get the steampunk theme across. So what little bit of theme is there in that the stuff on the board. So I like that. The game, I mean, it still falls prey to some of the stuff I don't like about Euros, in that you've got this really strong beginning and it feels like the game is going very fast, and at the end it gets very tense, but then you've got that entire middle section that's just going through the motions. It can feel like kind of a slog. You don't really know who's ahead, and it can be kind of a drag, but I think that there's a lot of Euro games like that, and it feels a little worse in this one because the game can be long. If everyone knows what they're doing when they come to the table, and everyone is not prone to analysis paralysis, then you can knock it out in 2 to 2.5 hours, but you're more likely, especially for your first and second game, going to be 3 to 4. So if you don't like longer games, this might not be for you. There's other Euro games that probably go faster. But nevertheless, I do think that this is good. The games that we played were tight, which is always a plus for me. I think in our very first game, the furthest person behind was only like 10 points behind the next person, which wasn't too bad for this. I mean, we all felt like we were doing pretty well all the way to the end, and at least 3 of us felt like we got a shot at this, and we were all really close to top 3. So I love that. And so this is a good solid game. I don't know that it's going to get as much play as some of the faster games that I have, but I'm always happy to be branching out to different types of games experience that are outside of my wheelhouse. This City of Iron has enough theme and enough great mechanics to distinguish it from other Euro games. It'll probably be in my collection for some time. That is City of Iron from Red Raven Games, designed by Ryan Lawcat. Check it out. My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl, reminding you to get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.